Hello everyone, Nigel Saunders here of Ficus Bonsai. Today we're looking at the fancy styled Ficus microcarpa. We're going to be pruning the top canopy and doing a little bit of cleanup around the roots and that. But mainly just pruning the new growth on the top canopy. So some of the shoots are getting quite long, like this one. We start out with tiny leaves at the base, and as it gains vigor, the leaves start getting bigger. So we want to prune it back and keep our small leaves, and the new leaves that come in will be also small, or even smaller than these. So that's the reason we're kind of managing all these new shoots coming in, pruning those that require it, and we're also going to remove some of the leaves. And I'll show you that later on, just to get some light into the branches of the tree. And as we prune, we'll be doing directional pruning. So, instead of this shoot just coming straight up and curving around, we're going to prune it off so it gets some movement to the branch. So it'll also give taper to the branch, so we get movement, taper, and we trim it back so we'll get smaller leaves. So there's a lot of pluses to clip and grow type pruning as opposed to like wiring this branch into position somewhere. The other thing we're going to be managing is to get the top of the canopy pruned in a nice tight rounded form. It's kind of important to give the tree a look of maturity, is to have a rounded form to the top of the tree. You'll see this in most, most trees, tropical, deciduous trees. They grow up to their maximum height and then the branching gets finer and finer on top. And they have this nice rounded silhouette. It can be, clumps, but very rounded. You'll see this on full-size trees. So when we have shoots sticking up like this, it just breaks the illusion of a miniature tree. You get these shoots jutting out and it really spoils the effect. So we'll be pruning the canopy down to a nice rounded shape. I'm going to start up top, pruning that nice rounded canopy first. So we're going to use directional pruning, and we're going to go back as far as we can and keep our shape. So I got an outward facing leaf here I'll prune back to. This branch is growing in towards the center of the tree. We'll get rid of that. When you're pruning the canopy like this, you need to step back from the distance, back here, and look at the canopy and see what's sticking up and correcting it. There's one growing across the center of the tree here. We'll remove that entirely. Well, it's definitely getting more rounded on top, but we still have a lot of kind of clutter that's sticking up, so I'm going to keep pruning back a little further. So now that we have the top pruned roughly to our rounded shape, we just got rid of a few shoots that were sticking up. We want to start working on some of these branches. So we have this long one coming out. We want to prune it back to some of the shorter leaves and give it some change of direction, and it'll get a bit of taper into it. So on this tree, we want the lower branches to be more horizontal, and then as the branches go higher, we want them more vertical. So it'll give us that nice rounded crown. And you always have to watch on ficuses. There's always new shoots coming out all the time. So, for instance, in here, we've got a shoot that's crossing on the inside that we don't want. I'll just give you a close-up of that. Here's a close-up of the shoot in here. It's growing towards the center of the tree. So we're just going to remove that entirely. There it is. So you always have to watch for that on ficuses. They'll always be developing new shoots, and they may not be the direction you want them. You can see in this area of the canopy, there's a lot of congestion. You can't really see any branch structure. The leaves are going all over the place. So we want to thin that out. So what it'll involve will be removal of some of the larger old leaves, like that. And some of the leaves that are growing in towards the center of the tree we'll remove. There's one back here. And we'll have to do some pruning to eliminate shoots that are growing straight up, going the wrong direction and things like that. Clean up old pruning stubs, just to get the area thinned out so there's less clutter. So we get, to see some of the branch structure. Always pruning tips back to get more ramification. And a vertical shoot in here we can remove. You also find if you get too much congestion in an area, it's hard to see if you do have scale insects in that. It just becomes hard to manage. So it's best to keep your trees kind of thin to a reasonable level, because they can get out of hand quickly, especially when this tree goes outside in the summer. In the sun and warmth, it'll just explode in growth. So it's best to have all your branches going the right direction. So that's getting better, that area. If you look at the playlist section on the channel, you can kind of see the history of this tree, going back to when I started making videos. And you'll see that none of the steps are in the process of this tree were dramatic. They were all little steps. And the little steps just keep adding up to producing a better and better tree. So again, today's video, I'm not doing anything dramatic. I'm not doing dramatic wiring. I'm not doing dramatic pruning. I'm just sort of refining slowly. And all those little refinements will produce a nice tree in the end. I finished pruning up the canopy, thinning it, bringing it back. So the next thing we're going to tackle is, there's a root here that a lot of people ask me, is it growing over a rock or is that an egg? It's kind of one of those ginseng ficus roots that just bulges. So what we're going to do, we're going to carve it. And I think I'm going to try and take the one root and we're going to carve 2 grooves down it. So it'll separate the root into 3 living pieces. And it'll take away from that bulge. It'll look more natural once it kind of calluses over. So we'll start on that next. So here we go. I'm going to carve 1 groove down here and another down here. This is just a woodworking tool. Left over from my violin making days. There we go. There's a piece of that root out. We did some root carving on the other ficus sister, the plain looking one, and it turned out quite nice. There's 1 groove, and we'll start another one right here. Getting there. The other option with roots like this is if you get aerial roots growing down the trunk, you can drape the roots over places in the trunk you don't like, and it'll cover up those sections. Okay, I think that's good enough. Yeah, that takes the sort of round effect away. And once these live veins start, callousing, they'll create their own channel, which will bulge up and look more like a normal root. So I think in future this area will look quite good. Maybe I'll just take this one up a little further here. Like that. Ah, there we go. Yeah, that looks good. The last thing we'll be doing today is giving our moss a prune. You can see some of these, I don't know what you call them. The little tufts that come up on the moss, I think they're sort of like the flower. It probably disperses spores from these little stalks. So we want to prune those off, and we want to prune our moss down even tighter. The moss has done really well since the last video. So it just needs a quick little prune just to keep it nice and tight. We'll just blow away the excess. There we go. That's looking better already. So I'll continue doing the moss and we'll come back. Pruning your moss is kind of like taking care of a Gulf green. The more you prune it, snip the top off, the lusher it gets. It fills in with a nice high density moss covering, which looks really good. Like the top of your tree, you have to keep your moss, do some maintenance to it, keep it under control, and you'll get this nice tight layer of moss that looks like a grass covering. So that's it for today. We've again taken small steps towards the larger goal of getting a really nice bonsai tree. We're slowly getting there. Bonsai tree is never finished. It'll take many, many years before this tree is looking really nice, but we keep working towards our unattainable goal of perfection. So Nigel Saunders of KW Bonsai, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.